Electric cars will cost drivers £6,000 more if Rishi Sunak fails to strike a Brexit deal with the EU. I'm going to read into this exclusive from The Independent, guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an exclusive article from The Independent with the headline that electric cars will cost drivers £6,000 more if Sunak fails to strike a Brexit deal with the EU. Manufacturers warn of a devastating price war on consumers if tariff is enforced in 2024. So, obviously, the car manufacturing industry has suffered as a result of the Brexit trade deal. We know that for sure, and we also know that that we are falling behind when it comes to the electric car industry, as opposed to America and the EU, China. They're pushing all those other nations are pushing more widely ahead of us, and more needs to be done to protect our manufacturing industry. So obviously, the price war is going to be vital on this. And we need to make sure that we are giving ourselves the best opportunities we can to ensure that we can transition into electric cars into the future and make it as cheap as possible. Because if you want to transition people off petrol into electric, you need to incentivize for them. Now, slapping an extra £6,000 on the price of an electric car is going to put them off, isn't it? In the end, they're just going to end up buying an old banger and sticking with petrol, because why would they want to spend an extra £6,000 more on an electric car? It's money that people are already struggling as it is. We talk to death about the amount of the cost of living. So I would say that this is just as much as an eye that the Labour leader, Keir Starmer, needs to keep an eye on as much as Rishi Sunak on this. But let's read into it, guys, to get a better understanding. So, electric cars will cost British motorists an extra £6,000 if Rishi Sunak fails to strike a post-Brexit deal with the EU on tariffs, industry bosses have told The Independent. The UK manufacturers warn of devastating price wars on consumers, threatening both the electric vehicle EV market and the UK's climate change commissions if tariffs are enforced in January 2024. In the latest major Brexit row, the Sunak government is pushing the European Commission to agree to delay the new costly rules set to come in at the start of next year as part of Boris Johnson's Brexit trade deal. But Brussels have shown no sign of it willing to budge, leaving business leaders in despair about the impact of 10% tariffs on exports on Britain's car industry. The tariffs would increase the price of new Tesla Models Y, the UK's most popular electric vehicle, by £6,000 or more, according to a new report by the Independent Commission on the UK-EU relations shared with the Independent. So that right there smacks in the face of just how bad Brexit is right there. And the desperation from Sunak's government, rather than trying to hash out a deal, was just trying to stall, and just kicking the can down the road, leaving it for. They want to basically leave it essentially for the Labour government incoming to do, because that's essentially the picture that's being painted here. A lot of issues around Brexit seems to be more of kicking the can down the road from them, as opposed to actually dealing with the situation. Ownership and responsibility, which is something this government is clearly lacking, I think it's fair to say, guys. For the sake of our economy and our planet, the government has a responsibility to get round the table with the EU, fix this, and fix the raft of other issues with the Brexit deal, said the Commissioner Director Mike Buckley. The new rules of origin agreed in the Brexit Trade and Cooperation Agreement, the TCA, requires 45% of an electric car's value to originate in the EU or EU to qualify for trade without tariffs. The British auto industry has warned that 2024 rules impose an existential threat to sales beyond the lack of domestic batteries to meet the rules, pleading for a delay until 2027. The VDA, the lobbying group for Germany's car industry, has also called for an urgent move to the delay, warning that the rules create a significant complete disadvantage for European car makers in relation to China and other Asian competitors. Germany obviously has quite strong trading relationships with us as well, and this will no doubt harm them as well as it harms us, but we will suffer more as a result of it, no doubt. The new report by the Independent Commission on the UK-EU relations, backed by the manufacturing body Make UK and British Chambers of Commerce, warned that the January tariffs will immediately push up costs and hit electric vehicle sales. Richard Romblow, Make UK Director of International Trade, said the price cliff edge looming for electric cars in January could be huge. Households could soon be paying thousands more for electric vehicles. It would be a devastating price war on consumers. The trade expert added, it is imperative that the government gets around the table with the EU and sorts this situation out as soon as it can. Industry needs assurances that it won't be forced to make consumers pay even more in these toughest of economic times. The Trade Commission, which examines the ongoing impact of the Brexit trade deal, also warned that it could set back Mr Sunak's hopes of achieving net zero in carbon emissions by 2050. The PM has already been accused of hurting the EV market by pushing back a ban on petrol and diesel car sales from 2030 to 2035. The Trade Commission said the failure to agree an extension of the grace period would cut EV production by up to basically nearly 500,000, 480,000. The number of extra fuel cars on the road would add over 807 billion grams of carbon to the atmosphere across the UK and the EU, said Director Mr Buckley. Given that the UK is already on track to miss climate targets on nearly every front and every further obstacle spells disaster. The UK report also calls on Sunak's government to pursue a deal for the UK to remain part of the EU VAT area, or VAT, so that companies do not have to pay the tax when importing goods. It also recommends the agro-food agreement that simplifies border checks would benefit the food and drink trade. This is not good at all, is it? Mr Buckley said the electric car tariff problem was just one example of how the Brexit deal is placing long-term limitations on the UK economy and making it harder to get growth, jobs and the end of the cost of living crisis. On the car tariff row, the Commission Director added, this isn't about politics, this is about making sure that the UK household gets the best possible deal and they aren't left thousands out of pocket unnecessary. British and EU officials met in London last month and will discuss the car tariff and other trade issues, but Brussels is reluctant to reopen any part of the existing trade deal. Thierry Breton, the influential European Commissioner, said that it would be wrong to give to pressure from one industry, and if something has been negotiated, it shouldn't be changed, he said. It comes as Britain struggles to boost its battery production for electric cars after the collapse of the British manufacturer Britishvolt earlier this year. Tata Group owner of Jaguar Land Rover announced plans this summer to build a $4 billion battery factory in Somerset. Mr Sunak called it an incredibly proud moment. Labour has promised to an agro-food deal to get closer alignment with the EU in attempts to improve the Brexit trade deal when it comes up for a formal review in 2025. But Sir Keir Starmer has shielded away from the idea of rejoining the single market and customs union. His shadow former Secretary David Lammy said earlier this week that a Labour government would have to start dating the EU again before closer ties could be achieved. Guys, I just think that it's just more problems for us to deal with, really, if we continue to ignore the flaws that Brexit has come. And clearly we've spoken already a bit about the car manufacturing industry and the damage that it's causing. You know, putting an extra £6,000 slapping onto people's bills when it comes to their pocket in order for them to get the electric car is just going to absolutely hurt them. And obviously the industry itself is going to suffer greatly as a result of this. But it's not really the EU's fault. The EU is simply, they cannot, in their view, they can't change their position. And it is a case of the Conservative government just deliberately and attemptedly trying to kick the can down the road about this issue, trying to delay the tariff enforcement next year, in order for them to basically pass the buck on to an incoming Labour government, which is looking very likely at the next general election. So that's kind of what seems to be happening here, rather than obviously taking ownership and responsibility, which I've already said. And it's pathetic, really, absolutely pathetic. So what do you guys think of this? £6,000 more for an electric car. How ridiculous is it, guys? Would you pay an extra £6,000 more just for sovereignty, as Brexiteers like to put it? Is it really worth that price? Can you afford an extra £6,000? I'd rather go and spend that on a holiday personally, but that's just me. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments section below what you think of this exclusive from The Independent. Like, share and subscribe as always. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.